What is up, everyone? It is that delightful time once again to make a Mac Pro episode. Now, I know what you're doing straight away. Those of you who know your Mac Pros, you are looking at this front panel, you're trying to closely look at the ports here to see if we've got two Firewire 800s. I can confirm we have. So that means today we are checking out the early 2009 4,1 Nehalem Mac Pro. We're already super nerdy, right? But that's the quickest way to tell. If you spot a Mac Pro and it has a Firewire 400 and a Firewire 800 port on the front, you know it's a 2008 or older. But if you spot the two Firewire 800s, you're kind of in luck because that's going to be a 2009 at the very oldest. Before we get really deep into the ramble, I need to give a massive thank you to a really good friend of mine and work colleague, Bosco. If you're watching this, huge thank you, man. He gave me this Mac Pro completely free of charge, and it's a glorious system. I have not touched it. We are touching it for the first time on camera. He gave it to me a number of weeks ago, but I finally had a chance today to just pull it up onto the desk here and check it out with you guys. I think you are gonna love this because this Mac Pro, I've had a cheeky nose around the back and I kind of know the story and the history of the machine. This Mac Pro is completely stock. I mean, absolutely stock, straight from Apple, straight from the very day that it was ordered. And it's a nice configuration as well. So I cannot wait to show you a really nice example of a clean, non-upgraded Mac Pro. But possibly even cooler than that, this is the first time on the channel that we're checking out any Mac Pro that is newer than the 2008, at least any cheese grater Mac Pro that's newer than the 2008. Last year, as most of you probably saw, I made a nearly 3-hour Mac Pro epic episode. If you haven't seen that, go and check it out. That was all about the first ever Mac Pro, the 1,1 2006. Lovely machine, and that's what's behind me just over here. Rolling back even further, I was a proud Mac Pro 3,1 owner back in the day, the 2008. A lovely, lovely machine, and there's of course coverage on the channel of all of that because we've been doing this for years and years now. And rolling back a couple of years, we checked out the 2013 Mac Pro, the trash can, which was good fun for an episode. But this marks the first time that we've checked out this particular cheese grater design. So the 2009, the 2010 and the 2012 are all very similar. It all starts here with the 4,1. The basic design and layout of the internals, the overall machine architecture, pretty much those three models are identical. We'll talk more about that later, but there are significant differences between the 2006, the 2008 and the 2009 machines. Then the 2009, the 2010 and the 2012, those three machines are all relatively similar. We were mainly just looking at different configurations, newer, faster CPUs, but the overall system, the architecture is the same. You can indeed flash these 4,1s to be easily a 5,1 machine to allow you to install the newer CPUs. That is completely possible. But I'm sure we'll get into all of those nitty-gritty details later on when we look at each part of the machine individually. I will warn you now, I think this is going to be one of those lengthy episodes, but it is really going to be worth it. Let's check it out, guys. Let's have a look at the lovely and fairly legendary Mac Pro 2009. Check out this shot. I was gonna go in close straight away and start talking about the machine, but just look at it here alongside its older brother. So over there is the 2006 1,1 Mac Pro that we checked out last year. And then this year we're checking out the 4,1. So we've leaped a couple of generations here. Of course, the 2,1 was just the incremental update to the 8-core variant of the 1,1. And then the 3,1, a machine that we haven't checked out in many years, but we have done in the past, of course. That was the 2008 machine, which had a few solid improvements over the 1,1 and 2,1. It was all around faster and more capable. But then the following year, they shook it up again with the 4,1, redesigned the internals, the first kind of drastic internal redesign since the 1,1 was released. And that's what they stuck with for the remainder of the original cheese grater Mac Pros. From the outside, they're pretty much identical. Other than around the frontier, you can see the difference in Firewire ports. You've got the 400 and 800 versus the 800 and 800. Again, a nice little cheat there if you're ever wandering around and you happen to see one of these at some kind of car boot sale or in a secondhand shop or something like that. If you're trying to spot what it is really quickly, then that's the best way to tell. There are also some differences with the fans. If you can see through the grill, it all depends on the lighting in the room, but if you can see through them, then the fan layout is a little bit different on the front, but nothing that you'd notice straight away You've got to really kind of be looking into the mesh to be able to see that. One kind of magical thing about having more than one Mac Pro on a desk is it just reminds us of the absolute dominance of these powerhouses back in the late noughties and early 2010s. Design studios, production studios, recording studios, any kind of professional environment, this was the Mac to get, and there was often more than one. Still to this day, even 15, 16, 17 years later, they look and feel absolutely beastly. And there is no denying that this was the pinnacle of the Mac Pro. At this particular time, Apple still had a very clear product strategy. The original quadrant of Macs that Steve Jobs pushed for when he came back to Apple in the late 90s was still pretty much in force at this time. Unlike the later years, there were clear differences between each model. When this Mac Pro was new, there is no way on earth that a Mac Mini or an iMac could even begin to rival it. As the years went on after the release of these sorts of machines, definitely through the 2010s and into where we are now with Apple, the gap between the different markets just shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. As the consumer machines got quicker and more efficient, the workflows of the professional didn't always demand the highest end machine. But something truly lovely about these original collection of Mac Pros is it was the last time that there was that clear difference between the consumer and the professional desktop. If you wanted to do serious work, you needed to put one of these under your desk, and that was just a fact. I think that's one of the reasons why they feel so incredibly special now. It is really difficult now to imagine a time with how powerful the little entry-level Mac Minis and the iMacs and every single computer is in Apple's lineup now and has been for a little while. It's difficult to remember back to a time where you physically couldn't do things on the consumer machine. And that's not just an Apple Silicon thing, that was true for the later Intel machines. It didn't take long for various iMacs and MacBook Pros to start beating certain configurations of the 2013 trash can Mac Pro, for instance. Everything that happened after this just shrunk that gap. And what didn't help was Apple's apparent abandonment of the professional market temporarily. When they let that trash can Mac Pro fester, they messed around with a lot of the Pro applications and upset a lot of people. Then a couple of years later, released the all-nonsense iMac Pro machine, and it took them a little while to get back on track with the professional. But I think these days we are back on track, albeit very much in a different way, because it needs to be in a different way. The machines are entirely different, the technology is entirely different, but this little window of time here, the transportation that we're going to take back to 2009, we are going to remember exactly what it was like. This is a Pro machine for the pros. At the top, we have our two 5¼ bays. The top one is always populated on the Mac Pro. The bottom one was always a build-to-order configuration, or you add your own second super drive or any other kind of drive you want to add later on. The G5 could only support one optical drive, then the redesign in the internals allowed space for the two optical drives when the first Mac Pro hit, and it stayed like this until the very last of the original cheese graters. When the full desktop form factor was resurrected in 2019 after the crazy trash can and iMac Pro stuff, we did not get any 5¼ because by that time, optical media and its uses, at least widely, was pretty much obsolete. On the front, we have our power button, headphone jack, two USB 2.0 and two FireWire 800s. Isn't it hilarious to think that so much time has now passed that pretty much all of these ports, maybe with the exception of the headphone jack depending on your audio setup, pretty much all of these ports are now obsolete. Yes, there's still a use for a USB 2.0 port, but it's not our go-to port anymore, and FireWire 800 is all but dead. I kept FireWire going in my own setups for a long time, but even I don't rock any FireWire devices daily anymore. Despite the resistance, FireWire did just slip away, which is so sad. I think FireWire almost deserves its entire own video. Maybe we'll have to do that one day. Here we have our top mounted power supply, just like every other Mac Pro. If you see a power connector at the bottom of the machine, if you're seeing one of these machines from behind, if the power is at the bottom, it's a Power Mac G5. And that's a really quick way to tell at a glance if you're looking at a Mac Pro or a G5 from the back. Moving down a little bit, we've got our latch here for the door that unlocks the door itself and various components inside. And then our expansion slots, 5 altogether, 2 occupied by the included GPU. And for those of you who know your 2009 Mac Pros, you will know exactly what graphics card is in here just by looking at the back panel. Yes, It is very exciting that we have this particular card included, and it unlocks more potential for us in this video to try out some cooler things. Stock card with this guy was the GT120, and this is a big step up from that, but I'm gonna save that until the internal reveal. Moving down, we've got one fan. Again, a nice easy way to tell the difference between a G5 and a Mac Pro from the back is one big fan versus two smaller fans. The Mac Pro has always got one big one at the bottom here. And then the back I/O, which was fantastic back in the day, but now not so much. 3 USB 2.0, 2 more FireWire 800. Bearing in mind that this interface is completely daisy chainable, they still give you 4 physical FireWire ports, optical audio in and out, analog audio in and out, and dual gigabit Ethernet. Still to this day, I think it's fantastic that they gave you the 2 network ports on all the Mac Pros. What I really like about that is if you did require 2 network ports, like many Pros do, you'd save an entire slot. You would no longer need to upgrade and add an additional network card because you already had 2 very customizable ports on board. Very, very nice. I got so excited talking about what graphics card we had, or rather teasing what graphics card we have, I forgot to talk about the ports. So we've got our dual link DVI here, which is pretty standard, but we've got this fancy new guy. This is the mini display port. First Mac Pro generation to ship with these mini display ports on board. This back in 2009 was all the rage. They went on to all the MacBooks and all of the Macs in general. The Apple LED cinema display, the new 24-inch LED cinema display at the time, that used a mini DisplayPort connector, and that was what Apple pushed for a couple of years until Thunderbolt became the mainstream, which is the same physical connector, of course, but very different in terms of capability. Until Thunderbolt came on the scene, this was the main monitor output for all the Macs. And this was pretty much the default display I/O for any Mac Pro and any video card in any Mac Pro that came after this. You get your DVI, but you also get your mini display port. You cater for everyone that's got a third-party monitor because it's DVI, and you're catering for everyone that buys a new cinema display that can be hooked right up to the machine directly. The genuine excitement I feel for checking out a machine like this is colossal. I still remember the very day that these came out. Every update to the Mac back then, especially the Mac Pro, was a big, big deal. At the time, the collective way that we all kind of referred to these models, this was the Nehalem Mac Pro. Intel's new 45 nanometer microarchitecture. This particular Mac Pro used that generation of CPUs, and we all just called them Nehalem Mac Pros. There was a lovely speed bump and feature bump over the 2008, and things were getting super, super powerful. Let's take a look at the belly of the beast then, and see what all the fuss is about. Unlocking it, taking the side panel off, here we go. Again, for those of you who know your Mac Pros, you will see a few things in here that are absolute delight. Let's go over those delights in an up close and personal tour of the internals of this machine very shortly. But first of all, I just want to point out that the overall internal layout is the same as the previous Mac Pros. From G5 to Mac Pro was a big reshuffle, but in terms of all of the Mac Pro models themselves, all of the Intel machines, this was the biggest overhaul of the internal design. So the top section is almost identical. Power supply, optical drives, storage, the 4 hard drive bays, and then we have our expansion here in this portion of the machine. But the big, big difference is this bottom section. CPUs and RAM are still contained within the bottom sort of third of the machine here, but in a very different way. In the 2006, 7 and 8 Mac Pros, the CPUs are over here under a cover, and the RAM is here on riser cards. We still have some kind of a riser card, but it's a fair bit bigger now, so we'll take a look at that in a minute. But overall internal design, very much the same, but the biggest reshuffle in terms of all of the Mac Pros. The 2010 and the 2012 after this guy remained identical inside. Taking a closer look, here's the optical drive section, and we discovered in the last Mac Pro video that when you lock the back, this also locks the optical drives in as well. So with that unlocked, we can just pull the optical drives out. I'm not going to do it now because we've got no need to. I'm 99.99% certain there's a stock drive in there because everything else in here is stock. At the back of the machine is our power supply. This is non-accessible for a general user. Most things in the Mac Pro are completely modular and are intended for upgrade. The PSU is not, of course, but it's easily changed if you do need to dive in, but it wouldn't have been something that your average user would have needed to do back in the day, unlike things like the optical drive, which are designed to just be pulled out at a moment's notice. 4 hard drive bays, Just like all the other original cheese grater Mac Pros, this is one area of the Mac Pro that really did not change. All the way through, each bay was using a SATA 2 bus, 3 gigabits per second, ideal for just normal 7200 RPM desktop hard drives. So the speed of the bus and the mounting and everything hard drive related did not change, but thankfully increased capacities finally became available. The drives start at 640 gigabyte for the lowest end model of the early 2009, which was finally a decent size. Apple have always been stubborn with their stock storage included, and today is no different. I think it's funny that the same amount of capacity at the low end or the entry level of Pro machine has pretty much stayed the same from this point forward. You'd be looking at a 512 gigabyte machine now. This came with 640. Nothing has really changed in 16 years there. When you go back and look at the 1,1 that shipped with the 250 gig drive, you wouldn't really be looking to purchase a Mac Studio these days, for instance, with 256 gigabytes of internal storage. But then again, I think even that in itself is comical. There were various BTO options for these in terms of storage. You could go up to 4 terabytes with a 1 terabyte drive in each bay, I believe. And still, for the early 2009, no SSD offered even as a BTO option. It was slightly too early. Storage is one place that is quite fascinating to look at when we look at the evolution of the systems. So thinking about this coming out in 2009, if you would compare it to a machine that came out in 1999, 10 years prior, you went from a machine that was potentially shipping with a 9 gigabyte hard drive or a 20 gigabyte hard drive or maybe a 30 gigabyte hard drive, all the way up to a machine at the lowest end shipping with a 640 gig hard drive. And that was kind of overdue. The 2008 machine shipped with a 320 gig drive, I believe. These days, we're pretty much in the same boat. Machines are shipping with 256 at the low end and then 512 at the slightly higher end. Then you have to pay the earth to configure them up to a terabyte or more. Apple have always been the same with storage, but there was a huge increase in the storage requirement through the noughties. The technology evolved at the right time. Everything came together at once. From hardly anyone using their PCs or Macs to store media internally and manipulate media internally in the late 90s, from nearly everyone doing so in the late noughties, there was an overwhelming need of more storage. Here we are in the PCIe section. These are all PCIe 2.0 slots in this machine, so quite a bit more capable than the 1,1 model. The lane layout of these slots, I believe we've got two 16-lane slots, this primary one and this secondary one, and then two 4-lane slots above. But that video card, man, this is the ATI Radeon HD 4870. Without a shadow of doubt, one of the coolest cards of the time. This was a great all-round card. It was super desirable on the PC side for gaming, a really solid performer. And in the Mac, it debuted in the early 2009 Mac Pro, and this was not the stock card. As I said, the stock card was the GT120. So this is indeed a BTO Mac Pro here with what was then top of the line Radeon 4870 installed. This video card, off the top of my head, I believe is going to have 512 megabytes of VRAM. The GT120 was also a 512 meg card, but this was a lovely speedy GDDR5 512 card. The little GT120 is a measly little GDDR3 card. So this had quite a bit more grunt, but early 2009 marked the first time that the entry-level graphics card had 512 megs of video RAM, which was quite the nice doubling upgrade from the 256 megs of VRAM included in the Radeon 2600 XT, which was the default card that shipped with the 2008 Mac Pro. Coming down to the final portion of the machine, and arguably the most exciting thing about this particular Mac is the CPU and memory tray. You can see two big heat sinks here. That means that we have a dual CPU model. So unlike the 1,1, 2,1 and 3,1, the 4,1 was the first Mac Pro that shipped in some single CPU configurations. So if you bought a quad-core machine, that was a 1 quad-core CPU. And if you bought an 8-core machine, that was 2 quad-core CPUs. Now the big deal here is, if you buy a quad-core machine, you only end up with a single CPU tray. The tray cannot take a second CPU. This means if you're looking these days to purchase one of these machines to upgrade, it is definitely advisable to look for the dual CPU tray model, because you can ram 2 faster CPUs in here and you will have ultimately a faster machine than a single CPU tray model. So this is definitely the most desirable out of the two. And again, this is the 8-core, so this is no low-end machine. Let's pull this out and take a little look. Now, I've never done this before. I've seen it done in a million YouTube videos right from the very moment these were released and even to this day. But this is my first ever time removing one of these trays from a Mac Pro, and sweet, okay, this is cool. The excitement I feel is unreal because, as I say, I just remember the huge deal when these came out. The huge deal right from the golden era of Apple just dominating in the Pro market. Just look at that. Here we have the 2 massive heat sinks. No fans on these heat sinks, the fans are in the system. We've got a push-pull thing going on with a giant fan at the front and a giant fan at the back, with huge amounts of airflow passing over this huge tray. I actually don't know what processors we have in here. At the lowest end, we could have dual 2.26 GHz CPUs. In the mid-range, we could have dual 2.66 GHz processors. Or right at the high end, we could have dual 2.93 GHz CPUs. So when we boot this guy up, that'll be one of the first things I want to take a look at. Another shiny, lovely technology that the Nehalem architecture brought to the Mac Pro was a much faster system bus. So everything in this system can talk to each other a fair bit quicker than it can in the early 2008. That is thanks to Intel QPI, or Quick Path Interconnect, which is a blazing 6.4 gigatransfers per second on the 8-core model. So what's nice about this generation of Mac Pro is some of the downfalls of the previous machine's dual CPU capabilities were being addressed by the overall faster system bus, and applications and the OS were maturing to the point where these dual CPU systems could really be leveraged. Apple started introducing dual CPUs all the way back in some of the older Power Mac G4s, at least 7 or 8 years prior to the release of this particular Mac Pro, but it took a very long time for lots of the software to truly become multi-threaded and take advantage of these processors. But by this point, they were pretty much there. On this card as well are the memory slots. We've got 8 memory slots, just like the prior Mac Pros, but no more separate riser cards, and a big difference. This model no longer uses FB DIMMs, so these are just standard DIMMs without the heatsinks, but they are still, of course, ECC DIMMs, as this is, after all, the Pro desktop. This specifically is PC3 8500 RAM, so the first Mac Pro to use DDR3. Lots of the Macs in 2009 made the leap from DDR2 to DDR3, the Mac Pro being one of them, so the previous speed of the RAM was 800 MHz, on the 3.1 Mac Pro 2008, and on this guy it is 1066 MHz. Later Mac Pros stepped that up slightly to the 1333 MHz speed, and I believe it is possible to install 1333 MHz RAM into this system, especially after a firmware upgrade to bring this up to the equivalent firmware of a 5.1 and with some CPU upgrades. But as standard when this machine was released, it was the stock original DDR3 1066 MHz. Taking a closer look at one of the DIMMs that's in this machine, that is a 2 gig DIMM, I think that says 2 gig. So it looks like we've got a nice 8 gig machine here, which would have been a fairly decent amount of RAM on a BTO option back in the day. There are no Apple stamps on this memory, but I don't think this has been upgraded at a later time. I'll have to double check, but I don't think it has. The only thing is I don't notice any of the lovely little Apple stamps, so that's interesting. I expect this would have been quite nerve-wracking for someone purchasing this back in the day. Could you imagine dumping £2,000 or £3,000 at least into this machine and then possibly choosing to upgrade your RAM afterwards and sliding this entire massive brain out of the system? Wow. That's great. The only thing about it is it's a little crunchy. I guess that's because of age. There's a bit of dust in there. Yeah. Nice, so that's locked into place. So I do have one small piece of the machine out here that is not inside, and it should be, and that is one of the hard drive screws that's come from this first sled. Now, these are kind of infamous, and I discovered this last year when all of the rubber gaskets had perished on my 1.1 Mac Pro, and when I started to look into replacement screws, I realized that they were perishing in all of the Mac Pros. This one though doesn't feel too bad. These three are in here nicely, and it is nowhere near as bad as my 1,1. This is a newer machine and it's probably been treated a fair bit better. In fact, I know that it's been treated better. It's just been left alone this whole time. We could pop that back into there quite easily, but we'll wait until we put a drive in the system. For now, I'm going to put the side panel back on and we're going to have a brief discussion before we go any further. The hard drive has been removed for obvious security reasons, so we need to put a drive back in. Because this is a stock machine that has never been upgraded beyond its original built-to-order configuration, I think it would be pretty rude to put an SSD in here straight away. I think for this episode, the best thing for us to do is to find the closest era-appropriate SATA hard drive to put into this and install macOS X Snow Leopard, which was the operating system of choice at the time. That's not to say that we're not going to bring it up to a newer OS in the future and install an SSD, but I want to get the real, true experience of this Mac Pro. We have the stock video card, we have the stock RAM, CPU, everything is the same as it would have been back on the very first day from Apple when the order was placed. And that is very uncommon with these Mac Pros. You find them usually, they've been upgraded, changed many times over the years, and they're different. And that's one of the things that's exciting me most about this episode. So if we put a hard drive in there and install Snow Leopard, it's the closest we're going to get to the experience back in the day. Now you'll be pleased to hear, because we're going to aim for a back in the day experience, I've pulled out a cinema display, an Apple keyboard and an Apple mouse. And we're going to go for that full hit 2009 goodness. I had a really good look through my stash. I was hoping I'd have a drive similar to this with an Apple stamp. Unfortunately, I don't. I've probably got one somewhere, but for now, we're just gonna have to make do with this random 500 gig Seagate. But this is just your typical 7200 RPM SATA hard drive from the time. This is a SATA 2 drive as well, so this is era appropriate. It's not overly ancient, it's not overly modern, and it's of similar capacity to the stock drive that would have come with this system. Check out our lovely stock Apple Mac Pro setup. This isn't entirely era appropriate. This would be a peripheral setup for a G5, a late G5 or an early Mac Pro. When these were available, the 24-inch LED cinema displays were available with the mini display port and the built-in iSight cameras, and the aluminium keyboards had very much been introduced. I think they were introduced in 2007, I want to say. So these had been phased out completely, but it wasn't uncommon to see Mac Pros with these sorts of peripherals in 2009 and 2010, because these are still the sorts of peripherals people had hanging around. And these cinema displays, maybe not the 20-inch so much, which is the version we have here, but definitely the 23 and the 30, they were very much an investment. So if you had one of those, it was still at the time an extremely good display. So let's turn the display on. Ooh, maybe we've got to turn the power on. Okay. Yes, I thought you could press the power button on the display to turn the Mac Pro on, but maybe not. Okay, here we go. So we should simply get no OS. I don't think macOS is installed on that drive. I'd be very shocked if it is. I've got no memory of where that drive is actually from, so it's taking a while for anything to display. Aha, here we go, folder with a question mark. That's cool. So we will need, ooh, I was not expecting that. I seem to have missed that when we originally... Okay, that's sweet. When we originally took a tour of the machine, I completely missed the fact that both sets of screws were in the optical drives. So we do indeed have dual optical drives here, which is awesome. And they both look identical, so they could well be stock, which I'm really hoping they are. Let's put our Snow Leopard disc in. I see no reason to hesitate. Here we go, one of the greatest operating systems of all time is going in. Let's close you, and let's close you. 2 optical drives, that's lovely. She's spinning up. What are we gonna get? Yes, straight away. The backlight has evened out nicely on the display now. It takes a minute with these older cinema displays. They're not LED, obviously, so you just gotta wait a minute for it to even out, but once it does, it is still such an impressive display. I particularly like these dinky little 1680 by 1050 resolution 20-inch versions. They're lovely monitors. Ooh, we got some lovely optical growling. Here we go. We are loading up. This is a good sign. Beautiful. Let's go a little bit closer. Ah, default tracking, so slow. The Mighty Mouse is really bad. I mean, I've got a soft spot for it. I really have. I had a wireless one back in the day. Some old viewers of the channel may remember, but yeah, it's such a rough mouse overall. But they are super nostalgic for me. I had one at home, we had them in college. Anyone that had a Mac was using, at the time, this mouse. Okay, sweet. So here we've got our drive displaying, which is cool. And we've got our two identical optical drives. So that answers that question. We'll have a deeper look once we've got an OS installed. Let's go for the classic Macintosh. Whoa. No, we do not want to do that. We want to do this. That was a close one. Getting too excited. So erase the drive, erase the drive. No idea if there's anything on it. I gave you guys a close-up listen to the optical drive a minute ago, and it's just transported me right back when we used to regularly use, and in fact exclusively use, optical drives to install operating systems and software. You always knew your optical drive. You knew the kind of sounds it was making. You knew that sounded really crunchy, and I'm not familiar with these optical drives yet, so you do wonder if everything is okay. But everything is absolutely fine. You get to know them. It doesn't take long. It takes a couple of installs, and then, oh man, I didn't customize. Rookie error, rookie, that's cool. Let it just do the whole thing. That's absolutely fine. It doesn't really make a difference anyway. I was just gonna deselect some of the printer drivers and stuff to make this quicker, but I'm too busy talking about something else. Anyway, all I was saying is you get to know your machines and you get to know the noises they make, and optical drives are a very, very good example of that. So we've got an estimated 30 minutes, which is not bad. And this actually works out quite nicely because I've got to empty my SD card. So I'm gonna keep a close eye on this, and obviously I'll jump back in if anything interesting happens. Wow, something interesting did happen. The install failed, but it gave me enough time to offload some footage, so that's really cool. Let's restart and let's go for it again, and I can change those customizable options as well. For those of you that have never owned one of these legendary mighty mice, the thing to do with this is when the scroll wheel gets gunked up, which it does regularly from just general use, you grab the mouse, turn it upside down, and on a bit of paper you just vigorously move it back and forth and round, and you can see lines of grime on the paper. And you can further enhance that by putting sort of screen cleaner or window cleaner or something like that on the scroll ball first, just a little bit. And that helps get the grime off as well. So I think we should do a fresh erase of this drive again in disk utility. Installer can't even see the drive, so let's fresh erase it again. Oh, that's fascinating. It has died, has it? The drive is no more. Where is the drive? Who knows? There is no drive. Let's just, yeah, no, it's gone. It's just died. That's really weird. Okay, we're gonna do our first sort of rogue thing. What does the Mac Pro do if you take the side cover off? Nothing. Okay, cool. Drive is spinning. We're gonna unplug that. Are you meant to do this? I don't think so. And we're gonna plug that back in. Okay, I can hear it spin back up. I really don't know if you can even hot swap a Mac Pro like that, but yeah, has that just died on us? Let's get another drive. Great stuff. We're not gonna shut this down. Do not do this at home, guys. This is not what you do. Let's get this. I think this has died. With it being a random hard drive from my box, I don't even know where it came from. That's the drive we put in. This is another 500 gig Seagate that we'll try. Bad IMNC. At least if this pipeline drive shows up, then we know that we can hot swap these. Oh yeah, I wasn't able to get the grommet back in the hole, by the way, which was really annoying. I did try for sort of 6 or 7 minutes, but I just couldn't do it, so it's just loose for the moment. I'll have more patience for it at a later date when I'm not trying to squeeze all this exciting stuff in. Ooh, and another grommet has popped out there. They'll just do that now when you take the drives out, so that's fine. Let's put that there. Let's get this. Okay, There's our next victim. The fact that I'm leaning the side panel against the cinema display as well just adds to the do not try this at home advice. Come on. There it goes. I can hear it spinning up. And in a minute, we'll do a Google search to see if you can hotspot Mac Pro drives. Something is telling me that you can't, but we'll soon find out. Disk utility. Oh, come on. Disk utility, searching for disks. No! What are you doing to me, machine? Restart the machine properly, Tom. Let the drive be discovered on startup, like it's meant to be. It'll be interesting to stick this in the toaster and see if it is definitely broken. We are loading up again with the lovely Apple spinny grey screen here. So we've arrived once again. Now the question is, are you going to see my drive? That is the big question. And then we will ask the all-knowing beast, the World Wide Web, if you can hot swap drives in the Mac Pro. Oh, damn. That's not a good sign. Disk utility. Ooh, flippin' heck. Okay, cool. That is fine. That is absolutely fine. No wonder it's not showing up in the installer. Okay, that's cool. We didn't get that last time. Let's see if it'll successfully erase. What are you gonna do? This is taking some time, but that's okay. Okay, some time has elapsed, most definitely. Are we gonna be preparing a third drive? It's been stuck at this point for a good while. I'm officially declaring disk utility as taking too long here. So the question is disk utility actually taking too long, or am I just accustomed to SSDs now? And digging back through the archives in my mind, no. It definitely shouldn't take this long. I don't think the hard drive's happy. This is now hanging completely. I think that drive is toast. So we're gonna go third time lucky. We'll make a little stack here, and if nothing more, this is helping me sort my hard drive collection. I mean, what better way to solve a tech hoarding issue than to just kill all of the tech? That isn't actually my advice, by the way. Obviously, I don't want to own a stash of broken hard drives. That's not really beneficial. I've got a feeling I spotted another one of these Seagate drives in there. Can we just say as well, and I know this is going to get people really angry, but can we just appreciate the fact that I've always been a Western Digital fanboy, and I've never denied that on the channel. Nearly every drive I've purchased, at least mechanical, has been Western Digital over the years. And I've generally had excellent experience, and every time a hard drive dies on the channel, it's always Seagate. Can we just appreciate that? Yes, I know you're not meant to ram it in when it's busy, necessarily. Okay, there we go, there's that. Shall we completely and utterly prove that point and put some Western Digital drive in now and have it work? That would give me a huge amount of satisfaction if we can find a WD drive. Oh, here's one, but flippin' heck, it's old and it's a green. Do I have anything else, man? WD server drive looks ancient. Oh no. Ugh, another Seagate. Okay, I don't have a WD drive appropriate for this machine. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in this Seagate that I've got here. Some of you will remember this one. This is a 250 gig and it's got writing all over it. It says partition 1 Vista 32-bit, partition 2 Vista 64-bit, and this was installed in my 1,1 Mac Pro as a Windows drive, because if you guys remember when I got that machine originally all those years ago, it was full of different random drives, and this is one of them. I know that this drive actually spins up and works, or at least it did. That's the wrong way. At least it did last time I used it. I think I also fresh erased all these, so this should show up without an issue. And no, it's not a WD, but sadly I don't have one of those. And do you know the reason why I don't have one of those in the box? Probably is because every single one that I've purchased and put into a machine is still working completely fine, and it's still in that machine. That's probably why I haven't felt the need to upgrade and retire the drive to my box, my random box. And secondly, to be fair, when I get a lot of these drives, they're from other systems that I've parted out or whatever, and usually you tend to see Seagate drives, especially if we're like parting out Skyboxes. Now, I know one of these has got to be from a Skybox or a similar DVR of some kind, pipeline hard drive for sure. Pop that in. Okay. And let's power this guy up. Oh, by the way, you should unplug the power before fiddling around in the internals of a computer, obviously. I think we're a good decade and a half past that sort of useful advice now, really, at least here in IMNC land. I will pop both of these drives in the drive toaster and run some tests to see what's happening with my new kind of organizational strategy here in IMNC HQ, which is a bulletproof system that I have spent the last decade engineering. Oh God. If they do not work, or if they report errors, or if I think they're just going to be rubbish, then I'll chuck them in the bin. That is my new way of thinking. It is now 2025 and I will say goodbye to some old broken hardware. Okay, here we go. This is the one. I can feel it. This is the one. Let's go. Ooh. Drives popped up. This is looking good. Man, that keyboard feels so much better in my memory than it does in real life. I used one of these on my desk for years and years. It's just so spongy. I was very late to the mechanical keyboard party. Mechanical keyboards have been around for yonks, but I was late to the resurgence. Lovely. That did everything it was meant to do. Quit. There, and first of all, customize. We save over 2 gigs getting rid of those printer drivers and 1.2 gigs on the language translations. No point getting rid of the additional fonts. Let's pop Rosetta on here from the get-go because it's tiny as well, and that'll help us maybe with some of the software we'll be running on here. I may have a couple of PowerPC games or something in the stash that I'd want to try out on here. It's better just to have it than not have it. Okay, now we've got a much shorter estimated install time, and this is further than we were getting with hard drive number 2, because we weren't even able to erase hard drive number 2, so that is very good news. But looking at the time, I do have to be somewhere in a minute, so I think I'm gonna have to let this do its thing and then check it when I come back, which is frustrating because if this does anything weird, then I kind of want to catch it on camera. This installation is going a lot better, and I love the fact that this drive is proving me wrong. It heard what I said about Seagate, and it is just throwing it all back in my face and installing like an absolute champ. Install succeeded. Check that out. That took probably, I'd say 14, maybe 15 minutes. Okay, here it comes. Let's see that intro video. There it is. Look at that. I'm gonna have to turn it down, unfortunately. This song probably, almost definitely tickles the copyright gurus. Love the way that these intro videos completely fill the screen on an optimal setup like this. Absolutely brilliant. Full widescreen, gorgeous intro video. Not to sound like a broken record every time we install one of these operating systems, but it is an absolute shame that intro videos are no longer part of the macOS installation. United Kingdom, British keyboard. Oh man, this machine has a network card. That's insane. My computer does not connect to the internet. Skip, create my account. Time zone, London, UK, perfect. Really have to go. I just saw the clock. But I just want to jump in and do one last thing on this particular session. Man, this is nice and speedy. I want to jump in. Okay, yeah, calm down. Let's eject you. I want to see what clock speed we've got. Oh my gosh. This machine is a flipping beast. This is the highest end configuration, 2.93 gigahertz. Wow, this was configured balls to the wall. 8 gigs of RAM, 2.93 gigahertz, 2 optical drives, a Radeon HD 4870. This is beautiful. Right, I've got to run, I've got to go. Let's reflect on that in the next clip. Shut down. Amazing. Lovely. Great success with this. So we're just finishing up on a couple of updates here. It's always a hairy moment when you click on that software update button. You just have to kind of wonder to yourself when Apple are going to pull the plug on software update for Snow Leopard, and even last time I used Leopard and Tiger, you could still use software update. So it does beg the question, when is that going to disappear? I also haven't visited their archive in a very long time, the big download page on the Apple website full of the old combined updates and the various incremental OS X system updates. It'd be interesting to see if that's still there, because I did plan on trying to personally archive all of those at one point, because you never know when you're going to need a specific version for a project. I think that came up when I was doing my G3 blue and white. Needed a very specific version of the operating system to be compatible with the CPU upgrade, and it might become difficult to find those kind of things in the future. I can hear the hard drive whirring away, not sure if you guys can, but it's kind of a little bit of a treat to hear it going there and have this snappy performance. As I've said so many times in all sorts of different videos, we really always automatically say now how slow and horrible hard drives are, but when you're running an operating system that was built and designed at a time where the hard drives were the way that you stored everything, they run just fine, because that's what they're made for. So as expected, we have got a few additional updates. Man, this flipping mouse, we'll have a look at the settings in a minute. But yeah, we've managed to jump all the way up to Snow Leopard 10.6.8, which is the latest version. Let's install the remainder of these updates. I don't think the tracking is going to go high enough on the Mighty Mouse to be comfortable. Over the years, I've kind of increased my tracking speed as well. I think we all have, really. Back in the day, I feel that we all had slower tracking on our systems, going all the way back to the old, ball mice, and then where we are now and everything in between. I've got a feeling that we all track now with faster tracking speed. So when you go back to these older mice on these older systems, it can be a little bit tough. But we'll have a look at the settings in a minute. Scraping around as well, I'm going to see if I can find a mouse mat. Okay, mouse mat successfully obtained. This should make it a little bit more comfortable. Yeah, kind of. The surface on the Mighty Mouse is just horrible as well. I definitely appreciate the Mighty Mouse for what it is, but you would not catch me using it these days at all. Can't believe I used to use one as my main mouse. I distinctly remember as well in college when we had, well, it was a Mighty Mouse on every single Mac setup in college. And I remember going around doing the scroll ball trick on them with the bit of paper. I'd do them to each workstation in the hope of getting the scroll ball to work again, because sometimes they do go past the point of no return. I feel for a sort of personal possession, if you own a Mighty Mouse, you can keep on top of it by doing that trick every now and again, but in a sort of more educational or commercial setting where you're getting lots of different users and heavy traffic throughout the day, I think those scroll balls just give up. They just get too greasy for any kind of fix. Years later, I think, well, this is quite an early one, I think, because it's got the grey sides. I want to say they became white afterwards. These are actually squeezy buttons. You can squeeze, you can choose, like it's really nice to squeeze to enable expose or something like that. But yeah, they stopped calling this the Mighty Mouse and they just referred to it as the Apple wired mouse, I believe. I think this was still available when the Magic Mouse first came out, and the Magic Mouse replaced the wireless Mighty Mouse. And then, of course, they had the cheaper wired option because there was never a wired Magic Mouse. But the fact is, this little beast was around for a long time and shipped with a lot of Macs. And it's not quite as disastrous as the Puck Mouse. Oh, here we go. Let the madness begin. Adobe Flash Player is out of date. Oh man, doesn't it feel like a million years ago with the whole Adobe Flash Player thing? Oh, it's a nightmare, absolute nightmare. Hey, no more updates, that's cool. Yeah, it just seems alien now, doesn't it? It seems completely like a different lifetime ago that we all needed Adobe Flash Player to run on our Macs. Okay, right then, let's have a look at this mouse situation tracking. Let's put it all the way up. Yeah, see, that is shit, for want of a better word. You can get a third-party app to improve it. Let's see what the scrolling speed at max is completely acceptable as well. That's fine. Scroll ball's working really well. So this is what I was chatting about. I'm not going to focus on the Mighty Mouse too much, guys, but you can do expose all windows is a nice one, so that you can squeeze the side of the mouse and come into expose, and then the nipple as well does things. Let's do, I guess, dashboard, because that was important at the time. Then you press the middle nipple and you get dashboard. So yeah, you get 2 extra buttons on this, which is sweet. Also, you can enable the right click secondary button. And the way that works, even though it's one giant button, it can sense when you have this finger on that surface of the mouse. So if you just remove that and then press the right-hand side of the mouse, you get the right click. So this was a way better mouse than the one-button mouse that Apple was shipping up until the release of this mouse. Yeah, pretty cool. Okay, now that that's done, let's get on to some important stuff. So I want to display all my discs and everything on the desktop here to make things easier. So first thing I want to do is jump into System Profiler before we start installing applications. There's a couple of things I really want to try. So first of all, we want to jump back in here because it was very, very rushed in the previous clip. We know the specs, we've got the top of the line system, which is sweet. Let's go into more info, and we just want to take a closer look at a little bit of everything. So here is the system, Mac Pro 4,1, fresh as a daisy, just like the day it was bought. 8 gigs of RAM is also a lovely amount of RAM to have on this system. There's no need for us to touch that at the moment. That's going to be ample for everything we want to do. Graphics and displays, Radeon HD 4870, 512 megs of VRAM. Memory, as you can see, quite a nice configuration here. 2 gig sticks with empty slots. It would be really nice to double this to 16 using 2 gig sticks, but it'd probably be just as cheap to actually throw it up a lot higher these days. The RAM is noticeably cheaper for these Mac Pros than it is for the 3,1 machines. The 1,1 and 2,1 aren't too bad at all, but the 3,1 800 megahertz FP DIMMs still can be a little bit expensive. Serial ATA, of course, one change is we're no longer on an ATA bus or an IDE bus for the optical drives. We have our drives, our optical drives, which are both completely matching in factory and stock, which is lovely. Both of these guys on the SATA controller. And there's, of course, our one hard drive that we've got. We do indeed have an airport card, like we discovered. There it is, the airport card. And does that mean that we're going to have Bluetooth? Yeah, we've got Bluetooth. I think it's combined, isn't it? It's the same card. So, yeah, that's really cool. One nice thing to do when we jump back into an older OS is have a little look at the dock and see exactly where we were at this point in time, what a fresh install got you, what was important to Apple at the time, and just look how this predates nearly everything that we come to expect now. One thing that always catches my eye when I install Snow Leopard is the App Store. I don't even think it works anymore, but this was the very beginning of the Mac App Store, right after the App Store boom of the iOS devices, of course. The App Store made its way onto the Mac. And luckily, Snow Leopard is before we got kind of the launch pad and lots more of the horribleness that came in Lion. So Leopard really is a sweet spot, but you see things starting to creep in here, and the App Store is the biggest indicator of all of that out of the box. It was a real mixed bag when the App Store first came out onto the Mac, but thankfully they never did go down the road of stopping you downloading the third-party apps. In later versions, you just had to tweak a couple of security settings here and there, and it was all good. Enough babbling. I am going to install some stuff, and for that I'm going to jump into my handy archive, of course. One thing that we're going to jump right into is Half-Life 2. I'm going to install this because for those of you who saw my Mac Mini video, you may have noticed how badly it was running on a system of a similar era, so that 2010 Mac Mini, and that's because I think we were limited to 1 gig of RAM. I need to revisit that machine, of course, but I want to try Half-Life on this machine. Half-Life 2 with a 4870, that is sweet as. That is such a beautifully optimized setup. 8 gigs of RAM, it should be a friggin' beast. We should be able to womp it right up full res on this monitor. We should be able to crank all the details ultra. That's going to be lovely, so we'll copy the collection. I'm also copying in Need for Speed Most Wanted because I tried that in the 2010 Mac Mini video as well, and that ran a little better than Half-Life, but still, that's my most recent reference point, is that machine, because we fired that up and these are the 2 games that I tried on that, so this is sweet. I'm going to have a quick look through the rest of my collection. We're also dropping Quake 4 in because that's another one we should be able to max out. I reckon we can max out all 3 of these games 100%. I think Half-Life will be the one that pushes the system the most. I'm going to dig straight into Need for Speed, first of all. You're not going to give me any more resolution options, are you? 1280 by 960 is the absolute highest resolution. We're not going to turn VSync on. Going to turn everything all the way up. Rain effect on. Okay. There's everything. Shame we can't get this into widescreen. I swear I remember playing this game widescreen. Anyway, whatever. Yeah, this is gonna have no troubles whatsoever, although the fans are ramping up a little bit now. And there she is, guys. There she is. Need for Speed. Yeah, this is butter. Oh, we don't get the mouse camera look thing. Okay, never mind. Let's have a little look and see what we've got controls-wise. So here we are, running with everything cranked all the way up. There's probably a fix for this widescreen thing. I swear I remember playing it in widescreen. But anyway, yeah, as you can see, it's running butter smooth. This game looks a lot rougher than I remember it, but a lot of it could be this copy. I mean, it's looking weirdly fuzzy to me for some reason. It's really bloomy and fuzzy. I'm not really sure what that's all about. But yeah, you can't argue that it's running amazingly. I wanted to try this one first because it's probably the least impressive. But no complaints whatsoever here, except the general look of the game. That could just be the style, I mean, I can't remember really. Let's go for Quake 4. And this one we should definitely be able to run in widescreen. Beautiful id intro, this one. Not everybody's favourite id era, Doom 3, Quake 4, but huge soft spot from where I'm standing. Huge soft spot. I love Doom 3. Love Doom 3. Oh, here we go. Our aspect ratio is not 16:9. Damn it. 16:10. Why wouldn't you allow me to have my... I bet when we launch Half-Life 2, the polish that is Valve will allow us to have the actual resolution of a bloody Mac display, for crying out loud. Ultra quality for everything. But let me crank my resolution. Okay, twitchy motion aside, this is running lovely. Oh, and the fact that we're squashed into the wrong side of the monitor. Let's see if we can do anything about that. You guys mark my words, as soon as we fire Half-Life up, it'll be perfect. I can guarantee it. I'll eat this mouse mat if you can't select 1680 by 1050 in Half-Life 2. I'll eat this mouse mat. And that's a promise. I tell you what, guys, this is spinning the fans up a little bit. Oh, yeah, but it's just horrible playing in this resolution. So let's quit out of that. Right, let's try Half-Life. Are you guys ready? We're gonna do this live on camera. No funny business. This is gonna work completely and utterly. Beach ball, lovely. It's not a problem. And look at that. It's the first game that we've tried that's launched in widescreen. It's filling our monitor. Let's have, ooh, damn. Oh, that was weird. Okay, give it a second. I guarantee you, because these games are just so well optimized, you can even zoom in them. Video. Oh, come on. Yes! Yes. Widescreen 16:10, baby. Brilliant. So full screen, this is where we can really dive in. And I think on this version as well, we have access to all the levels. So this is gonna be sweet. Let's crank the hell out of all of this. It's already defaulted us to high on everything. So we've got high, let's go very high. Let's just check all these options, make sure that we can go to the absolute max. Okay, let's save these settings. We are here in the beautifully smooth Half-Life 2. Look at this. Oh, scroll wheel. Oh, scroll wheel, man. Don't worry, we've got Q to swap weapons. Gravity gun, let's see. Where's... Yes. Ooh, hello. I wanna... Are we ready? Couldn't even get this far on the Mac Mini. Oh, shoot. There you go. Oh, that's sweet. Sweet. Now, one of the coolest things about this level is completing it only with the gravity gun. It just gives you such a sweet... Oh, damn. Okay, probably best when you're gaming to avoid those... those buttons. That's fun. Yeah, completing it with just the gravity gun is really satisfying because there's all these beautiful blades and stuff scattered throughout the level that you can use. Hello, ready for a little bit of an explosion, my friend? You love it. And just to finish you off, oh, come on, Mighty Mouse, don't let me down. Ah, too little, too late. Don't worry, I'll get your friend. Let's aim for the neck. Did we get the neck? Sort of. Torso. Pretty much. Oh. No! No! Let's go. Okay, what is going on? The control is... Okay, hang on a sec. There we go. 2 in 1. I think we need to practice a little bit more. He's going to get that barrel. Sorry guys, as you can see, you know, it's no joke. This Mac Pro is chewing through this game. So as fun as this is, let's try and talk a little bit sensibly about this. Where's my crouch button? Oh, crouch. Shift to crouch. Ooh, that was the jump button. Straight into the trap. God, yeah, we got him as well. That was brilliant. Yeah, so sensibly talking about this for a second. Where's the use key? Oh, it's control. That's not appropriate. Got you as well. So yeah, this is obviously running absolutely beautifully in every respect. Yeah, that runs brilliantly, but my gosh, is the GPU hot. Let me just move my microphone over to the Mac Pro. You can hear how that's growling. Growling. But yeah, top of the line machine performance, it's no surprise. The 4870 is a downright Half-Life 2 beast. It is right in that sweet spot. The game had been out a little while. The 4870 was a powerhouse on both the Mac and the PC side. This is no shock whatsoever. And as we anticipated, this is one of the best optimized games as well that we've seen here in terms of resolutions and this, that, and the other. That was really, really lovely. I would be more than happy to play through Half-Life 2 on a system like this. Don't get me wrong, it's a little on the loud side, but you could, you know, make those settings slightly more sensible to keep the noise down a little bit there. Check this out, guys. I was just browsing through my server to have a look for some funky stuff to install. Found an old version of iStat menus. I would have absolutely passed out with excitement if I'd have seen a CPU result like this in the menu bar back in 2009, 2010. It was either 1 or 2 back then, 1 or 2, not, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's crazy. That really is crazy. So in this frame, you guys can see 2 separate machines up and running. On the left is the machine that we've been playing with throughout this video, the lovely Nehalem Mac Pro. And on the right is my 1,1 original 2006 Mac Pro that we checked out a little while back on the channel and did some upgrades to. So we're going to put these head to head in a bit of a benchmark showdown just for fun. I've got them both running Snow Leopard here, and I've done a couple of cool little things. I thought this would be a fantastic excuse to use 2 Ethernet ports on a Mac Pro. There are limited times that that's kind of useful, so I thought this is a really good opportunity because I've only got 1 Ethernet cable running to this location in my room, and I wanted them both to talk on the network. They've both got Wi-Fi, I think. Let's just double check if this one has. I can't remember. Yeah, this one has as well, so it would have been easier to actually set it up over airport, come to think of it. But anyway, it doesn't matter because we're using both Ethernet ports on the newer Mac Pro. I've got an Ethernet cable connected from one to the other. Now, a couple of really cool things. Mac OS, or OS 10 as it was back then, has a really handy and super quick to set up internet sharing feature. But this wasn't the feature I was planning on using, but it turns out I've kind of been forced into using it. So a couple of interesting things, and this is another example of when features get introduced gradually in macOS and you just don't notice. You know, it's super easy to say Snow Leopard was the best, it was the most stable, it did everything, I loved it, but it's incredible over the last sort of 14, well, I suppose 15, 16 years, how many features have been quietly introduced that we kind of rely on that aren't in these older versions. And one of them is network bridging. So in theory, let me move closer to the screen so you guys can see. So in newer versions of OS 10, in the network section here, you can highlight two interfaces and you can create a network bridge, and that will completely bridge the network across those two interfaces, making it super easy to plop a second machine onto the same network. But Snow Leopard doesn't do that. And I tried to do it via terminal. I looked up the commands and it doesn't work through terminal either. So I'm using the standard internet sharing option, and that's just as easy as enable internet sharing. Then you choose your source connection. So in this case, Ethernet 1, which is connected to my main network, and then the destination connection to computer using Ethernet 2. So this is the Ethernet cable plugged into the host Mac Pro, this one here that I'm using, that's going to the other Mac Pro. And then that essentially shares the internet connection, but it creates a NAT. So we've basically got a separate subnet up and running. On this machine here, I'm just sitting comfortably on my network, which is 192.168.10 and whatever DHCP address I've been assigned, which is 154 in this case. On the other machine, let's take a little look. We are assigned an IP address automatically, I might add. You don't have to do any setup on this side. So DHCP, the host Mac Pro essentially creates a little DHCP server, and we get plopped onto 192.168.2.2, which of course is a different subnet, meaning that services like MDNS don't work. So Bonjour in the Finder for Mac doesn't work whatsoever. So you can't see a list of all of your servers as easily as you can when you're just on the same network. If we take a look at network here, Tom's Mac Pro network, as you can see, no list of servers apart from the server that I've manually connected to. So as you can see, it can't tell what it is. You don't get the funky little icon, but you can manually go and still connect to that server like so, which is completely fine. Of course, you've got to know the address and the file sharing protocol of the server that you want to connect to. But anyway, cut a long story short, I can still connect to the server to get the tools I need. And this machine has internet access now. So yeah, we've created a little Mac Pro, not bridge network, but a separate little subnet here using the internet sharing options. Okay, so the filming and stuff is going to be shoddy as anything in this bit, but let's just have a little look at the specs of the machines to remind ourselves. So we've got the 8-core, 2 times 2.93 gigahertz quad-core Intel Xeon, 8 gigs of 1066 megahertz DDR3, and of course our drive here is a hard drive, and we've got the 4870 graphics. And then on the other machine, this is where we properly need to refresh our memory, we have got the standard configuration 2 times 2.66 gigahertz dual-core Intel Xeon, so 4 cores altogether, much slower memory, nearly half the speed, old DDR2, but a lot more of it, 32 gigs, and we're rocking a boot SSD. As for the video card, it's a newer video card. It's a 5000 series AMD HD card, Radeon HD series card, but it is the lower end 5770, so the 4870 still outperforms the 5770 unless you have a specific need for a 5000 series. On the PC side, for instance, the 5000 series supported DirectX 11, whereas the 4000 series maxed out at DirectX 10, so that's a consideration there, but that obviously doesn't impact us at all on the Mac side. Okay, the first one is Geekbench. We are going to run both of these. Sadly, I don't have a licensed version of this older version of Geekbench, so we can only run the Intel 32-bit tests, which is a bit of a shame, but we're going head-to-head anyway, so at least it'll give us a little bit of something. It'd be really cool to do the full-on 64-bit test for these guys. Just to make myself even more boiling hot in this room full of computers, I've turned another light on. It is surprisingly melting in here with these two Mac Pros going. Even when they don't do anything, they just create a lot of heat. We just completely took that for granted, but these days with the super tiny little efficient Apple Silicon machines, it's a different world, it really is. The newer Mac Pro finished first. We have got a score of 15,535 versus, oh my word, look at that, 5,654. Isn't it incredible the difference of just a few years? Just a few years. Bearing in mind, when this 2009 machine came out, the 1,1 was, you know, not a cheap machine. 3 times quicker in this test. That's incredible. Just want to take a look at how much of it is memory. Yeah, pretty much double on the memory there, look. Pretty much double or triple across the board. So that is Geekbench, absolutely wonderful. Let's run something else. We're gonna do Xbench, and let's run this on the primary drive. So I'm going to run this on the SSD, and we're going to do all tests. Let's tick all the boxes. There's only one drive in this system, so we'll run it on that one. Let's blast it out. Like I've said many times when testing with Xbench in my videos, this is not really a suitable test for these new machines. This benchmark was abandoned a good little while before these machines were kind of current, so the benchmark is not that capable when testing modern hardware, but when you're doing a side-by-side, it gives a really, really solid comparison. I can hear the hard drive crunching away as it tests that. The hard drive is going to get annihilated. What we'll then do is collapse all of the results to get our final scores. As you can see, we've got a much lower score on the newer Mac Pro, 135.79 altogether versus 245.66. So CPU test, as you can see, the newer Mac Pro wins out by not a huge degree, but a fair few more points. On the thread test, the newer Mac Pro completely annihilates. On the memory test, even though we've got far more memory on the older Mac Pro, the faster memory wins out. Quartz graphics and OpenGL graphics are about what we'd expect. We see sort of a nice boost with the older but more capable GPU. User interface test, not certain what's going on here. This is definitely an interesting one. We might rerun that and see what happens, but something could be going on there. Driver-wise, graphics-wise, I'm not too sure what's happening there, but whatever, we'll ignore that. User interface test is not written for this OS anyway, so that's cool. And then the disk test is where our entire score suffers. So it's fascinating to me that this utility from 2006 can still detect such a speedy disk. So on the SSD we score 455.61 and on the hard drive 50.59. So that's a crazy bonkers difference there. And that's why we've got an overall higher result on the older Mac Pro. If we stuck an SSD in this newer Mac Pro, it would be an ultra beast. I'm just gonna run that user interface test one more time on both machines. Yeah, see, it got a wild different result there. 98.01. It just chews through everything so quickly, I think. It really does depend what the system is doing at that time. 99, yeah, much closer now, 99.72. So we'll take that one with a pinch of salt, definitely. I'll run that one more time. Let's just see what it does on this system one more time. Yeah, okay. We seem to be getting a more consistent result now. Okay, that's cool. Next up, I want to take a quick look at OpenMark. So this is where we start dumping some heat out into the room. Let's run the benchmark on both of these. 3, 2, 1, go. And let's see what we've got. So I have to admit, it's a better start on the newer Mac Pro. The older Mac Pro seems to have given up entirely. We've lost display. Now we're a black screen. Hello, older Mac Pro. Are you still with us? That 4870 is chugging away now. I know you can't hear the fan noise on the video, but boy oh boy, it's there. Yeah, we've lost this other system entirely, so let's go for a reboot. So as the 2006 is restarting, the 2009 is still chunking and chomping its way through this graphics data. We're down now to 400 FPS region with many triangles on the screen. Let's try and run that again. As you can see, SST gets such a lovely quick boot up. Let's see what happens. Run benchmark. It's just dying. It's not going to run it. That is such a shame because I'd love to see the comparison. Shall we cheat a little bit and try and alter the resolution? It could have something to do with the monitor because obviously the cinema display is completely native to the machine. This monitor is not. So I'm just having a little fiddle with the display settings and I noticed we were in 50 Hertz. So I've applied it at 60 Hertz. I doubt that's going to make much of a difference, but no. I was just curious to see if I could get this monitor to behave a little bit more like a cinema display. Yeah, it really upsets things when I run that benchmark, doesn't it? Can this monitor do 100 Hertz? I don't think it can. Max is out at 75 Hertz, this monitor. Oh, excellent. Should we try and run it like that? Let's see what it does. Oh, sweet. It's... I was not expecting that. So by putting the refresh rate up to a refresh rate that's not supported by this monitor, we've been able to stop the application from crashing. But whether these results will be accurate or not now is another thing entirely. The benchmark is nearing completion on the newer machine. We're down into the 87 FPS range. So we've got a little bit of a wait and a lot more heat to kick out, but that Mac Pro is doing it, man. It's doing it squished into the middle of the screen. I hope this benchmark calculates more just on the raw data crunched and not kind of like the output of the GPU as such, because it's not really a fair test with this one over here looking like some kind of weird non-optimized arcade machine display at the moment. So ages later and 5 degrees of temperature increase later, Celsius, it's in, the results are in, and yeah, fairly consistent with, well, actually no, a more dramatic leap. Yeah, more than double on the 4870 versus the 5770, but you can't deny the monitor weirdness over there. It'd be interesting to go head to head on the same cinema display. Whether that makes a difference or whether it's all about the compute, I don't know at all with this benchmark, OpenMark. This obviously just goes for OpenGL performance here, but 4870 is a beast, man, and it's a hot beast. It's a toasty little monkey, so I'm gonna close these apps because they constantly push those GPUs when they're just sat there rendering that. Hopefully we can get our display back to normal. So there we have it, the Mac Pro 2009. What an absolute monster of a machine. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about upgrading this. I love the fact that it's stock. I've mentioned it over and over again in this video. I really like the fact that it is straight from the factory, proper Apple Mac Pro, but I'm also aware that this model, more than any other model that I've owned before, is capable of extreme upgrades. And it finally makes sense to do so in sort of a tinkering kind of way, because just a few years ago, the parts to upgrade these were still relatively expensive because they were still quite a viable machine to use. But I was having a cheeky little browse on eBay and it is not that expensive to pick up some CPUs, a killer GPU, loads of memory, and all sorts of lovely goodies for these machines. So I really don't know what to do. If I did upgrade it to the max, I'd have no use for it anyway, so it would purely be for fun, for the project, for the video, and would I rather just have this on my shelf as a lovely example of a stock Mac Pro? It's kind of hard to say, so I'm going to sit on it for a bit and see what happens. I think the answer may become clear eventually, but right now, I'll leave it as it is. We'll move on to some other projects, but we've ticked a huge one off the list. I've always wanted to check out one of these Mac Pros, and it's kind of funny over the last 10, 15 years, the number of opportunities that have cropped up for a potential purchase, whether it's friends selling them, people I know, good deals I've spotted on eBay, and they're even appearing on Facebook Marketplace these days. But like we always say, if we just wait a little bit, then these opportunities come up. And I just want to say a massive thank you again to Bosco for giving me this gorgeous machine. It is a wonderful, wonderful bit of kit. So I hope you've all enjoyed checking out this Mac Pro with me. You can't beat a Mac Pro video, but I do have some other lovely stuff coming up, and I've even started prepping the next project behind me here. So I think you'll all enjoy that as well. As always, a huge thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.